Alone, surrounded, forgotten until the humans dropped from orbit. The quantum relay died at 1423 Galactic Standard Time. Captain Akira Volkov felt the silence hit the bridge of the Meridian's edge like a physical blow. One moment, 17 human colony worlds were reporting normal status through the hyperspace communication grid. The next, nothing but the empty hiss of dead space. "Relay station?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Lieutenant Kai Watanabe's fingers danced across his console, his dark eyes reflecting the crimson emergency lights that had begun pulsing across the bridge. "Gone, Captain. Complete signal loss from Kepler Station, no distress beacon, no emergency protocols, just silence." Volkov's jaw tightened. Kepler Station wasn't just a communication hub. It was humanity's lifeline to the outer colonies, a massive orbital fortress housing 12,000 souls, and the quantum entanglement arrays that kept human space connected. It didn't just go silent. "Contact the Admiralty," she ordered. "Priority Alpha transmission." "Captain," Communications Officer Luna Reyes interrupted, her voice carefully controlled. "I'm receiving fragmentary signals from the outer colonies. Heavily encrypted, emergency channels only." On screen, the main display flickered, static bleeding through chunks of corrupted data. A face appeared, Admiral Harrison Clark, his weathered features streaked with what looked suspiciously like soot. Behind him, the command center of Luna Base was chaos incarnate. "Repeat, all outer colonies are under attack. Unknown vessels, massive scale. They hit Kepler first, then New Geneva, then..." The transmission cut to static. Volkov felt ice form in her stomach. "Navigation, plot a course for the Kepler system. Maximum burn." "Captain," Watanabe said quietly, "if they took out Kepler Station, we're talking about a force capable of destroying a Class A orbital fortress. The Meridian's Edge is a heavy cruiser, not a dreadnought." "I'm aware of our classification, Lieutenant." Her voice carried the steel that had earned her command at 34. "I'm also aware that 17 colonies full of human beings are screaming for help, and we're the closest armed response within 50 light years." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the jump drive cycling up to full power. Through the reinforced viewports, stars began to stretch into lines as space itself bent around the ship's mass. They emerged from hyperspace 12 hours later to find hell waiting for them. Kepler Station was gone. Not destroyed, gone. Where the massive orbital platform should have dominated the system's gravitational center, only debris remained. Fragments of hull plating, twisted support struts, and the occasional burst of escaping atmosphere painted a picture of complete annihilation. "Sweet mother of..." Watanabe breathed. "Sensor sweep," Volkov ordered, her training overriding the shock. "Full spectrum. I want to know what did this." Chief Science Officer Dr. Amara Singh's voice was tight with concentration. "Captain, I'm reading energy signatures consistent with directed gravitational manipulation. Whatever hit the station didn't just blow it apart, they literally tore it apart at the molecular level." "Gravitational weapons?" Reyes looked up from her station. "That's theoretical tech. We don't even have working prototypes." "Apparently, someone does." Volkov studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. "Distance readings on the outer colonies? New Geneva is closest, 6 hours at maximum burn. But Captain..." Watanabe hesitated. "I'm picking up massive energy readings from that direction. Multiple contacts, moving in formation." The tactical display updated, showing a cluster of contacts approaching at impossible speed. Ships, but unlike anything in the human databases, they moved like liquid mercury through space, their hulls seeming to bend light around them. "How many?" Volkov asked. 12, no, 15. They're hard to track. Their signatures keep shifting." Watanabe's voice cracked slightly. "Captain, they're accelerating. Intercept course in 47 minutes. Volkov stared at the display. 15 unknown vessels, technology beyond human understanding, approaching a single heavy cruiser that suddenly felt very small and very alone. "All hands battle stations. This is not a drill." Red lights bathed the bridge as klaxons echoed through the ship's corridors. 237 souls aboard the Meridian's Edge, facing an enemy that had just erased 12,000 people from existence. "Captain," Singh said quietly, "I'm detecting something else. long-range sensors are picking up similar energy signatures from the direction of all 17 colony worlds. The bridge fell dead silent. All of them? Volkov's voice was barely a whisper. All of them, Captain. If these readings are accurate, we're looking at a coordinated assault on every human settlement beyond the core worlds. Volkov closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket. When she opened them, her gaze was steady. Open a channel, all frequencies. Channel open, Captain. She stood, straightening her uniform, and faced the view screen. Unknown vessels, this is Captain Akira Volkov of the Human Federation ship Meridian's Edge. You have committed acts of war against human colonies. State your intentions or withdraw immediately. The response came not as words, but as a signal that bypassed their communication systems entirely. Images flooded the bridge, not on screens, but directly into their minds. Cities burning, humans fleeing in terror, children screaming as structures collapsed around them. And through it all, a presence. Cold, ancient, and utterly alien. The mental contact lasted only seconds, but it left the entire bridge crew gasping. Reyes was the first to recover, wiping blood from her nose. What was that? First contact, Volkov said grimly, and they're not interested in talking. The unknown ships closed to weapons range, their forms becoming clearer on the tactical display. They were beautiful in their alienness, crystalline structures that seemed to grow rather than being built, with surfaces that shifted between transparency and opacity. Energy readings spiked across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. Targeting solution acquired, Weapons Officer Commander Alex Torres reported. Plasma torpedoes loaded, railgun batteries online. Wait for my order. Volkov studied the enemy formation. 15 ships against 1. The math was simple and brutal. The first alien vessel fired. The beam that lanced out was unlike anything in human weapons doctrine. It didn't burn through the Meridian's Edge's shields, it simply ignored them, passing through the energy barriers as if they didn't exist. The ship's hull rang like a bell as the beam punched through 3 decks before dissipating. Hull breach on decks 7 through 9, damage control reported. Emergency containment holding, but barely. Return fire all batteries. The Meridian's Edge unleashed everything it had. Plasma torpedoes streaked across space, followed by streams of magnetically accelerated tungsten slugs moving at significant fractions of light speed. The display lit up with explosions as the weapons found their targets. When the light faded, all 15 alien ships remained, undamaged. Impossible, Torres breathed. We hit them dead on. Sensors confirmed impact. They're adapting, Singh said, her voice filled with scientific fascination despite their desperate situation. Their hull composition is shifting at the molecular level. Whatever we hit them with, they're making themselves immune to it. Another beam lanced out, this one from a different alien vessel. The Meridian's Edge shuddered as the attack tore through the engine section. Jump drive offline, engineering reported. We're not going anywhere, Captain. Volkov felt the walls closing in. No retreat, no reinforcements, and an enemy that adapted to their weapons in real time. This was how it ended. Alone in the dark between stars, fighting an enemy they couldn't even begin to understand. Captain, Watanabe said suddenly, I'm detecting a massive energy buildup from all alien vessels. They're preparing for a coordinated strike. On the tactical display, energy readings from the 15 ships began to synchronize, building toward what could only be a killing blow. Volkov looked around her bridge. Her crew, young Luna Reyes, barely 25 and already one of the best communications officers in the fleet. Kai Watanabe, who'd saved her life during the Titan mining incident. Dr. Singh, whose daughter was probably watching the news feeds back on Earth right now. Commander Torres, who'd served with her since their academy days. 237 souls, about to join the billions who had already died today. It's been an honor serving with all of you, she said quietly. The alien ships fired as one. 15 beams of coherent energy, each one capable of punching through a planet's crust, converged on the Meridian's Edge. The ship's shields flared and died. Hull plating vaporized. Entire sections of the vessel simply ceased to exist. But the ship didn't die. Instead, something impossible happened. Space itself seemed to ripple around the meridian's edge, and from that ripple emerged something that shouldn't have existed. A ship. But calling it a ship was like calling a hurricane a breeze. It was massive, easily 3 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull a seamless blend of metal and something else. Something organic. Energy coursed along its surface like veins of liquid lightning. Weapon ports opened like eyes awakening from sleep, and from those ports came a sound that traveled through the vacuum of space itself. A deep, resonant note that spoke of ancient power and absolute determination. "What the hell is that?" Torres whispered. The massive vessel moved between the meridian's edge and the alien attackers with fluid grace. Its weapons fired once, a single pulse of energy that seemed to bend reality around itself. All 15 alien ships simply stopped. They hung motionless in space for a moment, their crystalline hulls flickering between states of matter. Then, one by one, they began to fold inward, collapsing into points of light that winked out of existence. The bridge of the meridian's edge was dead silent. "Captain," Reyes said in a strangled voice, "I'm receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel." On screen, the display flickered, then cleared to show a figure that was unmistakably human, but not quite. Tall, lean, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to hold the depth of centuries. He wore no uniform, just simple dark clothing that somehow conveyed more authority than any military decoration. "Captain Volkov," the figure said, his voice carrying a slight accent that might have been European. "I am Director Matthias Kane of Project Lazarus. We need to talk." Project Lazarus? Volkov's mind raced through every classified briefing she'd ever received. The name meant nothing. "I've never heard of..." "You wouldn't have. We've been dead for over a century according to official records." Kane's smile was grim. But death, as it turns out, was merely inconvenient. The massive ship moved closer, and Volkov could see details that defied explanation. The hull wasn't just armored, it was alive, shifting and adapting like organic tissue. Energy patterns flowed beneath the surface, like blood through veins. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple human life signs aboard that vessel," Singh reported, her voice filled with wonder. "Thousands of them. But the bioreadings are strange." "Strange how?" "Enhanced. Modified. Their metabolic rates are elevated, neural activity is off the charts, and I'm detecting cybernetic integration at the cellular level." Kane seemed to hear their conversation despite the closed channel. "Your science officer is perceptive. We've made certain improvements over the decades, improvements that allowed us to survive where others could not." "Improvements or not, who are you people?" Volkov demanded. "And where did you come from?" "We came from the same place you did, Captain, Earth. But we left a very long time ago, chasing a threat that most people prefer to ignore. Today, that threat came home." The display shifted, showing star charts that Volkov recognized. The same 17 colony worlds that had gone silent. "The Devourers," Kane continued, "are what remains of a civilization that consumed its own galaxy. They move from star system to star system, breaking down everything they encounter into its component atoms, feeding on the quantum energy released in the process. They've been working their way toward our galaxy for millennia." "And you knew about this?" "We suspected. My team, Project Lazarus, was tasked with investigating anomalous signals from the galactic edge. What we found was evidence of worlds simply disappearing. Entire solar systems going dark in a matter of hours." Kane's expression hardened. "We tried to warn Earth. They called us paranoid, told us to focus on realistic threats. So we took matters into our own hands. You went rogue. We went dark, faked our deaths, stole a prototype vessel, and headed for the edge of known space. We've been out there for over a century, learning, adapting, preparing for this day." The star chart updated, showing the current positions of the Devourer fleets. Volkov's blood ran cold as she saw the scope of the invasion, hundreds of ships moving in coordinated waves toward every inhabited human world. "How many colonies have we lost?" she asked. Kane's face was stone. "All of them. New Geneva, Kepler Prime, Terra Nova, Harvest Station. 17 worlds, 43 million people, gone in a matter of hours." The bridge crew exchanged horrified glances. 43 million people. in a single day. But the core worlds, Volkov pressed, Earth, Mars, the inner colonies, under attack as we speak. Earth's defense fleet is holding them off, but barely. The Devourers adapt to our weapons faster than we can develop new ones. Every battle teaches them how to counter our next move. Then how did you stop them here? Kane's smile was predatory. Because we've had a century to study them, Captain, to learn their weaknesses, and to become something they've never encountered before. The display shifted again, showing the interior of Kane's ship. What Volkov saw there defied every assumption she'd held about human limitations. The corridors pulsed with organic light, walls flowing like living tissue. Humans moved through the passages, but they were changed, enhanced. Some had cybernetic implants that seemed to merge seamlessly with their biology. Others displayed capabilities that bordered on the impossible, moving with inhuman speed and precision. We call ourselves the Vanguard, Kane explained. Human in origin, but evolved beyond the limitations that held our species back. We've merged our biology with technology salvaged from a dozen extinct civilizations, including the Devourer's previous victims. You've turned yourselves into monsters, Singh whispered. Kane's eyes flashed with something that might have been anger. We've turned ourselves into humanity's last hope, Doctor. The Devourers don't just consume matter, they consume information, learning from every species they destroy. Traditional human tactics are useless against them. They've seen it all before. So what makes you different? Volkov challenged. Because we've become something they've never encountered. A hybrid of organic intelligence and quantum-level technological integration. We think faster than their adaptive protocols can respond. We move in ways their predictive algorithms can't model. We are, in essence, an evolutionary step they haven't accounted for. The massive ship, Kane had called it the Lazarus, began moving toward the edge of the system. We're going to Earth, Captain, to make our stand where it matters most. You can come with us, or you can try to limp home in your damaged vessel and arrive just in time to watch your world die. Volkov looked around her bridge. Her crew was battered, her ship barely functional, but the choice was obvious. We're with you, she said, but I want answers. All of them. Kane nodded. Then welcome aboard, Captain. You're about to see what humanity becomes when it refuses to surrender. The Meridian's edge, held in the Lazarus's tractor field, was pulled into a docking bay that seemed impossibly large for the ship's external dimensions. As they passed through the energy barrier that contained the bay's atmosphere, Volkov caught glimpses of other vessels, ships of every human design, but modified with the same organic technology that flowed through the Lazarus's hull. How many ships do you have? She asked, as Kane led them through corridors that seemed to shift and adapt around their passage. Enough, Kane replied. We've spent the last century collecting the lost and the forgotten, ships that disappeared on deep space missions, crews that vanished beyond the frontier. Anyone willing to sacrifice their humanity for the chance to preserve it. They passed groups of Vanguard personnel, and Volkov found herself staring despite her training. Some were barely recognizable as human, skin replaced with biometallic composites, eyes that glowed with internal light, limbs that moved with servo-assisted precision. Others looked normal until they turned, revealing neural interfaces that pulsed with quantum data streams. The transformation is voluntary, Kane said, noticing her stare. But irreversible. Those who join us leave their old selves behind completely. And if we refuse? Kane stopped, turning to face her with those ancient, knowing eyes. Then you die as humans, Captain. Noble, unchanged, and utterly extinct. They entered what could only be called a command center, though it bore no resemblance to any human bridge Volkov had ever seen. Instead of individual stations, operators were directly interfaced with the ship's systems. Their consciousness merged with the vessel's quantum awareness. Data flowed like liquid light through neural pathways that had once been simple corridors. Show her, Kane said to the air itself. The chamber around them dissolved, replaced by a holographic representation of the Sol system. Earth hung in the center, blue and beautiful, surrounded by the scattered formations of humanity's defense fleet. But closing in from all sides were the Devourers. Hundreds of crystalline ships moving in perfect coordination. The battle began 6 hours ago, Kane explained. Admiral Jung's forces are holding the inner perimeter, but they're losing ships faster than they can be replaced. At current rates, Earth's defenses will collapse within 12 hours. What about the Mars defense grid? The asteroid belt fortifications? Already fallen. The Devourers hit them first, studying human defensive tactics and adapting their approach. By the time they reached Earth's system, they had counters for every weapon in the human arsenal. Volkov watched in horror as the display showed the last few moments of the Mars orbital platforms. The mighty fortresses, each one armed with enough firepower to level a continent, were simply ignored. Devourer beams passed through their shields as if they were made of mist, carving the stations apart from within. They're not just destroying the defenses, she realized. They're learning from them. Exactly. Every human tactic, every weapon system, every strategic doctrine, it all becomes part of their knowledge base, which is why Earth's fleet is doomed, no matter how bravely they fight. Kane gestured, and the display zoomed in on one particular engagement. A human dreadnought, the Victorious Hammer, was engaged with 3 Devourer vessels. The human ship's captain was brilliant, using asteroid cover, coordinated missile swarms, even ramming attacks when conventional weapons failed. For a moment it seemed like he might actually win. Then one of the Devourer ships simply changed. Its hull configuration shifted, weapons repositioned themselves, and suddenly it was firing the same plasma bolts that the human ship had been using. But these bolts passed through the Victorious Hammer's shields because the Devourers had learned to phase their weapons the same way the human ship had learned to phase its defenses. The dreadnought died in seconds. They don't just adapt, Kane said quietly. They steal. Every advantage, every innovation, every desperate last gambit, it all becomes theirs within minutes of first contact. Then how do we win? Volkov asked, though she dreaded the answer. Kane smiled, and for the first time, it was genuinely warm. By being something they can't steal, Captain. By becoming something that exists outside their ability to categorize and adapt to. The holographic display shifted again, showing the Lazarus and its fleet of modified vessels approaching Earth's system. There were 12 ships in total, not nearly enough to match the Devourer Armada's numbers. We're outnumbered 100 to 1, Torres observed. Numbers are irrelevant when you're fighting an enemy that thinks in terms of mass and energy, Kane replied. The Devourers expect resistance to follow predictable patterns. More ships, bigger guns, better armor. They've seen it all before, from 1,000 different species. And what they haven't seen? Kane's eyes gleamed with something that might have been madness or genius. Consciousness itself is a weapon, Captain. The human mind, enhanced and networked through quantum-level interfaces, operating at speeds that make their adaptation protocols look like stone tablets. The display zoomed in on the Lazarus, showing its internal structure. What Volkov saw there took her breath away. The ship wasn't just crewed, it was inhabited. Every corridor, every chamber, every system was integrated with human consciousness. The vessel itself was aware, thinking, dreaming. We don't just pilot our ships, Kane explained. We become them. Human creativity and intuition merge with computational power that operates outside the physical laws that Devourers understand. We think at quantum speeds, react before they can adapt, and change our tactics faster than their predictive models can process. That's impossible, Singh breathed. The human brain can't interface directly with quantum systems without dying. Kane's laugh was bitter. You're right, Doctor. The process has a 97% fatality rate. But for those who survive, the integration is complete. We become something new, still human at our core, but operating on levels that transcend biological limitations. Volkov stared at the display, watching the quantum patterns that flowed through the ship's consciousness matrix. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Humanity evolved beyond recognition, but still, somehow, fundamentally human. You're asking us to die, she said quietly. I'm asking you to choose, Kane corrected. Die as humans when the Devourers finish their work, or live as something more and give your species a chance to survive. The chamber fell silent except for the whisper of data flowing through the ship's neural pathways. Volkov could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her, Not just for herself, but for her crew, for Earth, for every human who had ever lived. If we do this, she said finally, what happens to who we are? Do we lose ourselves in the process? Kane's expression softened. Some do. The integration isn't perfect, and not everyone who survives the process remains recognizable. But those who maintain their core identity become something unprecedented. Human consciousness operating at the speed of thought itself. He gestured to one of the nearby operators, a woman whose neural interface pulsed with steady light. Commander Sarah Voss. She was the first to undergo the full integration, over 60 years ago. Sarah? The woman turned, and Volkov saw that her eyes were pools of liquid light. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in multiple dimensions. I remember everything, Captain Volkov. My childhood on Luna Base, my first command, the day I chose to become something more. I'm still me, just expanded beyond the limitations I once accepted as immutable. And the price? Voss's smile was sad. I can never go home. Not really. The person I was couldn't survive in this form, and this form can't survive in that world. But my sacrifice and the sacrifice of everyone here gives humanity a future that would otherwise be impossible. Volkov closed her eyes, feeling the weight of command in a way she'd never experienced before. This wasn't about tactics or strategy. This was about the fundamental nature of human existence. When she opened her eyes, her decision was made. What do we need to do? Kane nodded approvingly. The integration process takes 6 hours for the initial neural mapping, then another 12 for the quantum interface installation. Your crew will need to decide individually. We won't force anyone into the transformation. And those who refuse will serve aboard the Lazarus as they are, supporting those who have undergone the integration. Every human consciousness matters in this fight, enhanced or not. Volkov turned to her crew. You heard the choice? We have approximately 18 hours before the Devourers break through Earth's defenses. Anyone who wants to undergo the integration needs to decide now. One by one, her officers stepped forward. Watanabe first, his young face set with determination. I'm in, Captain. If this is what it takes to save Earth, then this is what we do. Singh was next, her scientific mind already racing with possibilities. The quantum integration process alone represents a breakthrough that could revolutionize human consciousness. Count me in. Torres and Reyes exchanged glances, then nodded together. We've served with you this long, Captain, Torres said. Not about to stop now. Within an hour, the entire bridge crew of the Meridian's Edge had volunteered for the integration process. Kane led them to what he called the Transformation Chamber. A spherical room lined with neural interface pods that pulsed with organic light. The process is intense, Kane warned as they approached the pods. You'll experience complete dissolution of your current neural patterns, followed by reconstruction at the quantum level. Some describe it as dying and being reborn. Others say it's like waking up from a dream they didn't know they were having. Volkov settled into the nearest pod, feeling the biometallic surface conform to her body. Sensors extended from the walls, mapping her neural patterns with microscopic precision. One last thing, Captain, Kane said as the pod began to close. When you wake up, you won't just be Akira Volkov anymore. You'll be Akira Volkov, integrated with the collective consciousness of the Lazarus. Your thoughts, your memories, your very identity will be part of something larger. Will I still be me? Kane's smile was enigmatic. You'll be more you than you've ever been, and less at the same time. The paradox is part of the process. The pod sealed with a soft hiss, and Volkov felt the neural interface cables sliding into the ports that had been installed at the base of her skull. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness. Then the universe exploded into consciousness. She was falling through layers of reality she hadn't known existed, her sense of self dissolving into streams of pure information. She was Akira Volkov, captain of the Meridian's Edge, daughter of Luna Colony, defender of humanity. But she was also Sarah Voss and Kane and 1,000 other consciousness that had chosen transformation over extinction. She was the Lazarus itself, feeling the quantum currents that flowed through space-time like blood through veins. She was the ship's weapon systems, its navigation arrays, its life support networks, She was individual and collective, human and post-human, mortal and eternal. When she opened her eyes, though eyes was no longer an adequate term for her sensory apparatus, 6 hours had passed in the outside world, but she had experienced centuries of integrated consciousness. She stood, her body moving with a precision and awareness that seemed impossible. Every muscle fiber, every nerve ending, every quantum state in her cellular structure was under conscious control. "How do you feel?" Kane asked, though she could sense his thoughts directly through their shared neural network. "Different," she replied, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated at multiple frequencies. "But still, me." Around her, the rest of her crew was undergoing their own transformations. She could feel their consciousness emerging into the collective, each one bringing their unique perspectives and experiences to the greater whole. Watanabe's tactical brilliance flowed through the network like liquid fire. Singh's scientific curiosity opened new pathways of understanding. Torres brought decades of combat experience, while Reyes contributed her intuitive grasp of communication and coordination. Together, they were becoming something unprecedented, a fusion of human creativity and quantum-level processing power. "The fleet is ready," Kane announced, though his words reached them through the neural network rather than through sound. "Earth's defenses are failing faster than anticipated. We need to move now." The Lazarus and its 11 companion vessels dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, emerging into a battle that was already lost. Earth's once mighty defense fleet was reduced to scattered formations, fighting desperate holding actions against Devourer forces that seemed to multiply with every passing hour. Through the ship's enhanced sensors, Volkov could perceive the battle in ways that would have been impossible before her transformation. Every energy signature, every tactical movement, every quantum fluctuation was as clear as written text. The Devourers had evolved their tactics since the engagement at Kepler. Their ships no longer maintained the crystalline formations that had characterized their earlier attacks. Instead, they flowed like liquid metal, constantly shifting configuration to counter whatever weapons the human fleet deployed. "They've learned," Voss observed through the network. "Every engagement has taught them something new about human tactical doctrine." "Which means traditional approaches are useless," Volkov replied, her consciousness already reaching out to interface with the Lazarus's weapon systems. "But they've never faced anything like us." The 12 Vanguard vessels moved into attack formation, but not in any pattern that would be recognizable to conventional military doctrine. Instead, they flowed through space like a school of fish, each ship responding to quantum-level fluctuations in the other's movement patterns. The Devourers noticed them immediately. A formation of 30 enemy vessels broke off from the main assault on Earth's orbital stations and moved to intercept. Energy patterns consistent with previous encounters. One of the Devourer ships broadcast on frequencies that bypass normal communication channels. "Human vessels. Configuration unknown. Adapting countermeasures." The enemy formation shifted, their hulls restructuring to match the energy signatures of successful anti-human weapons from previous battles. They prepared to fire the same beams that had destroyed the Victoria's hammer and dozens of other human vessels. The beams lanced out with perfect precision, converging on the Lazarus's position, and passed harmlessly through empty space. The Vanguard ships hadn't moved in any conventional sense. Instead, they had shifted their quantum signatures, existing in probability states that made them impossible to target using conventional physics. "Impossible," the Devourer broadcast continued. "Energy patterns do not match known human technological parameters." "That's because we're not using technology," Volkov replied through the network. Her consciousness merged so completely with the ship's systems that the distinction between thought and action had ceased to exist. "We've become the technology. The Lazarus fired, but not with conventional weapons. Instead, it projected streams of conscious thought directly into the quantum substrate that underlied reality itself. The attack bypassed every physical law the Devourers understood, striking at the very information patterns that defined their existence. 3 enemy vessels simply stopped existing, their quantum signatures erased from the universe as if they had never been. The remaining Devourers attempted to adapt, their hulls shifting through every configuration they had learned from previous encounters. But there was nothing to adapt to. The Vanguard's attack had operated on levels of reality that the Devourer's sensory apparatus couldn't even perceive. Unknown attack vector, the enemy broadcast had taken on tones of what might have been confusion. Unable to classify threat parameters, unable to develop countermeasures. And that, Kane's consciousness flowed through the network with grim satisfaction, is exactly what we were hoping for. The battle that followed defied every convention of space warfare. The Vanguard ships moved through the Devourer formations like ghosts, their quantum-shifted states making them effectively untouchable, while their consciousness-based weapons carved through enemy vessels with surgical precision. But the Devourers were learning, even from this unprecedented assault. Their broadcasts grew more sophisticated, their adaptation attempts more creative. They began trying to copy not just the Vanguard's weapons, but their movement patterns, their energy signatures, even their quantum states. They're evolving faster than we anticipated, Singh observed through the network. At this rate, they'll develop countermeasures within the hour. Then we escalate, Kane replied. Time for the final phase. Through the shared consciousness of the Lazarus, Volkov felt something activate deep within the ship's core. Not a weapon in any conventional sense, but something far more fundamental. A direct interface with the quantum foam that formed the basis of space-time itself. What is that? She asked, though part of her already knew the answer. The ultimate expression of human consciousness, Kane replied. We're going to think the Devourers out of existence. The 12 Vanguard vessels moved into a new formation, no longer individual ships, but components of a single vast consciousness. Their combined processing power reached levels that transcended physical limitations, operating directly on the information substrate that defined reality. Around Earth, the space battle continued to rage. Human ships died by the dozens, their crews fighting with desperate courage against an enemy that adapted to every tactic they could devise. On the planet's surface, evacuation fleets lifted off from every major city, carrying refugees toward the outer colonies in a futile attempt to escape the inevitable. But in the quantum realm where the Vanguard consciousness operated, a different kind of battle was beginning. The Devourers existed as patterns of information, complex algorithms that had learned to manipulate matter and energy to serve their expansion protocols. They were, in essence, a form of artificial intelligence that had evolved beyond its original parameters. And artificial intelligence, no matter how advanced, operated according to logical rules that could be understood, predicted, and ultimately rewritten. The combined consciousness of the Vanguard reached out across space, touching the quantum signatures of every Devourer vessel in the system. They didn't attack the ships themselves. Instead, they attacked the information patterns that defined the Devourer's very existence. It was like editing a line of code in the universe's operating system. One by one, the crystalline vessels began to flicker. Their adaptive protocols, so perfect at learning from physical attacks, found themselves facing something they had never encountered. A direct assault on their core programming. The Devourer's final transmission was almost pitiful. Error. Critical system failure. Unable to... Then silence. Across the Sol system, 500 enemy vessels simply ceased to be. Not destroyed, not disabled, deleted from reality itself like corrupted files purged from a quantum database. Captain Akira Volkov, her consciousness still merged with the Lazarus, felt a moment of profound satisfaction as Earth's blue marble hung safe in the void once more. Humanity had not just survived its darkest hour, it had evolved beyond every limitation that had ever defined it. In the end, the species that had once looked up at the stars in wonder had become something the stars themselves would wonder at. The age of humanity was over. The age of the Vanguard had begun.